Jake Paul's got a new opponent, and this is going to be a good one. Let's get right into it. Ring Magazine is reporting that Jake Paul and former heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua are finalizing a deal for a fight in Miami for December. Now, as a fan of boxing, this is going to be fun. Jake Paul is a guy who has for years, in my opinion, been taking advantage of the social media aspect of boxing and drumming up attention and rage baiting in order to get himself somewhat of a name, some visibility in the sport while fighting over the hill ex-UFC guys or low-level boxers who really pose no real serious threat, all the while claiming he wants to reach championship level status at some point. Well, I always said to myself, how are you ever going to become a champion if you don't follow the road to become a champion? You can't just talk your way into a championship fight. Well, after making a deal to fight Gervonta Tank Davis and coming up short because Tank Davis got into some legal trouble, although his side is saying that Jake realized he couldn't make the 195 weight max. Who cares? That fight fell through, and now he needs to find a replacement. And because Netflix is funneling the money for these fights, they need a serious opponent, somebody who's going to get some serious fans to go and people to watch to validate even putting this much money into this type of charade. Enter Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua, former heavyweight champion who has taken some embarrassing losses, has always kind of felt like the butt of everybody's jokes and the lesser of the heavyweight champions because people kind of feel like he's a little too Hollywood, not really ready to get down and dirty. Well, I got news for you. If Jake Paul thinks he's going to walk into this fight and be able to knock out Anthony Joshua, this fight could go the way of the Francis Ngannou fight, where everyone thought because he looked good against Tyson Fury, Ngannou posed a real threat and could possibly beat Anthony Joshua. And Anthony Joshua came out and dispatched of him in brutal fashion in just 2 rounds. I fully expect this fight to go very similar. I expect Anthony Joshua to take this incredibly serious because at his point in his career, it's not just about a payday. It's about proving a point. His legacy is on the line. And that's where the hater in me rises up and wants to rally against this fight and for Jake Paul even getting this opportunity. Because I would ask you, what has Jake Paul done to earn the opportunity to step in the ring with a potential Hall of Famer like Anthony Joshua, someone who has fought on the highest of level against the greatest of opponents? Why does Jake Paul get this fight? Well, because the name of the game is attention and eyeballs, and with a sport which is so clinging on to life like boxing, we need the big events. We need those big storylines. We need the bumbling idiot to come in and talk trash and get people angry and get people to want to see him lose so that they show up and watch the fight. Now, I'm glad it's going to be on Netflix. The fact that I could sit down on my couch, pop on Netflix and watch the fight without having to do any extra work is wonderful. But Jake Paul is an interesting study because the competitor in me, the contrarian in me says, I love the idea that this guy didn't start as a young kid wanting to box, that he kind of stumbled his way into it. He kind of got into this influencer boxing scene and fell in love with the sport and committed his life to the sport. And for the past few years has been really living and training and breathing as a boxer. And what an amazing story that would be for him to actually go on to beat somebody like Anthony Joshua and maybe get a title shot. What a magnificent story. What an unbelievable story. But the way he's going about it, instead of trying to make himself a Rocky-like figure who people want to root for and rally behind, he's painting himself as a villain so people will hate him, thinking he'll go the route of Mayweather and be the most hated person where millions of people will watch just to see him lose. But with each one of these fights and opponents that he's been choosing lately, it just feels like no one really feels satisfied if he wins or loses because it doesn't feel authentic. Something about it feels fake and manufactured, and the hater in me says, man, this fight could go the same way, right? Now, if you're a boxing fan, do you kind of give him a moral victory just for getting in the ring with Joshua? Do you look at Joshua sideways and say, why would you take this fight? Is it about the money? Is he willing to take a dive? Because, you know, the rumors are always that these fights with Jake Paul are fixed. You're not allowed to knock him out. You're not allowed to really go all the way on him. You got to kind of hold back a bit. I don't believe that that's true. I just think that when you talk about age and confidence and all of those things, like, Jake Paul usually has all the advantages in the fights, but in this fight, he's going against a guy who's not way out of his prime, a guy who has fought in recent years, a guy who hasn't taken a massive long layoff and it was kind of middle of the road when he was at his peak. You're facing a guy who's closer to his prime than not. You're facing a guy who's always going to be dangerous, a guy who is a physical freak, a guy who is a really good athlete, but also a guy who you've seen get knocked down. You've seen his chin get tested. You've seen him get sloppy. The question is, can Jake Paul really take the punch of a legitimate heavyweight? Because Anthony Joshua is going to be significantly bigger than Jake Paul. Anthony Joshua is a guy who's 6'6", probably running around 240. Jake Paul is about 6'1" and maybe can get up to 220, 230, but it's going to be a little more flab than muscle. I would love to see this being billed as Jake Paul finally taking on a real challenge, stepping up, proving that he's got what it takes. But I feel like ultimately what's going to come of it is, win or lose, Jake Paul still gets to walk away as the golden child. He still gets to walk away getting credit for even fighting Joshua. And if he wins, he gets credit as being legitimized. It almost just feels like it's painting Anthony Joshua in a no-win situation where you go out there, you beat this guy up, and people are kind of critical of you. Although now that I think about it, saying it out loud, I think Jake Paul has made himself enough of a villain in the sport to where people might even champion Anthony Joshua. And how fitting is it? A guy like Anthony Joshua, who was the butt of so many jokes, who people kind of just wrote off, has the opportunity to end not only one hype train, but two. Because when he knocked out Francis Ngannou, I, as a fan of boxing, felt pride. Thank you. Thank you, Joshua, for coming into this fight and not taking it easy, not trying to drag it out, but going in there with one intention and one intention only: to end this whole charade of this idea that Francis Ngannou was going to be the new heavyweight king. Now, hopefully, praying to the gods above, I hope that Anthony Joshua and his team come into this fight with the same mission. Let's end this whole charade, make it an early night, get our payday, get out of here, and stop this whole charade called Jake Paul. What do you think about this fight? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll catch you guys next time.